It's funny how the people who are supposed to protect you can also be the ones who wound you the deepest. My name's Emily Carter, and I learned that lesson the hard way from my own brother, Ryan. It all started the night of our father's retirement party. The air smelled like bourbon and nostalgia. Our dad had built his small construction company from nothing, Carter and Sons, though I guess that name never really included me. Even as a kid, I'd tag along with Dad to job sites, wearing my little pink hard hat and pretending to take notes on his clipboard. But once Ryan was old enough, it was like I disappeared. He was the son, the future of the business. I was just the kid sister with too many feelings and not enough backbone, as Ryan liked to say. That night, Dad's friends filled the banquet hall. There was laughter, music, and the hum of small-town pride. Ryan stood at the podium in his crisp gray suit, flashing that charming grin he used to get out of trouble all our lives. He tapped the microphone, made a joke about Dad's old Ford truck still running on spite and prayer, and everyone laughed. Then came his speech, the one I'll never forget. I just want to thank my father for trusting me to carry on his legacy. He taught me everything I know about hard work, leadership, and being a man who takes charge. Some of us, he chuckled, glancing at me, just aren't cut out for business. The crowd laughed again. I felt my cheeks burn. He winked at me like it was all good fun, but I could see the glint in his eyes, the same glint he had when he pushed me off the swing set when we were 8 and said I needed to toughen up. I forced a smile, but inside, something cracked. Later, I slipped out to the parking lot. The cold November air bit through my dress, but I didn't care. I leaned against my old Toyota and stared at the frost forming on the windshield. I could hear the music from inside, muffled by the walls. It all sounded distant, like a life I didn't belong to. "Em?" My dad's voice broke through the night. I turned. He stood there in his flannel jacket, his hair silver now, his eyes soft. "Don't let him get to you," he said quietly. "Ryan means well. He just doesn't always think before he speaks." I wanted to believe that. I really did. "It's fine, Dad," I lied. "I'm just tired." He sighed, then handed me a small envelope. "This is for you. I was gonna wait, but maybe you should have it now." Inside was a simple letter, his handwriting neat, deliberate. He said he believed in me, that he'd seen the way I'd worked quietly behind the scenes, balancing his books when Ryan forgot to pay the vendors, fixing customer complaints, smoothing things over when Ryan's temper got the best of him. And then the last line, "Never forget, sweetheart. Sometimes the one overlooked is the one meant to lead." 2 months later, Dad passed away. A heart attack in his sleep. Just like that, the world felt smaller. The reading of the will was quiet. Ryan strutted in like he already owned the place, all confidence and cologne. When the lawyer cleared his throat and began, I braced myself. "To my son, Ryan Carter, I leave my vintage truck, my fishing cabin, and my tools." Ryan smirked. Then the lawyer continued. "To my daughter, Emily Carter, I leave my shares in Carter and Sons Construction and my full blessing to manage them as she sees fit." Ryan's smirk vanished. "Wait, what?" The lawyer kept reading, but I barely heard him. My heart pounded. I hadn't known. Dad had never told me he'd made me part owner. Not just a token share either. His shares. The majority. When the lawyer finished, Ryan stood. "This is ridiculous. Emily doesn't know anything about construction. She's a glorified bookkeeper." I swallowed hard. "Dad trusted me, Ryan. That should mean something." "It means he was confused," Ryan snapped. "You're not running this company, Em. I am." He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the blinds rattled. I sat there, numb. I didn't want his company. I just wanted respect. But I knew I couldn't back down. Not this time. Over the next few months, Ryan kept running Carter & Sons like nothing had changed. He'd ignore my calls, lock me out of meetings, and even tell employees I was just helping out with paperwork. It was humiliating. Every time I tried to assert my position, he'd laugh it off or tell me to stay in my lane. I spent nights at my kitchen table reading every file, every invoice, every dusty binder I could find. The deeper I dug, the more I realized something was wrong. There were missing receipts, overpaid consulting fees, equipment purchases that didn't match the inventory. One night, I confronted him. "Ryan, what's going on with the finances?" I asked, setting a stack of papers on his desk. He didn't even look up. "You wouldn't understand." "Try me." He leaned back, grinning. "You think you can just waltz in here, play boss because of a will. This isn't a game, Em. This is business. Then run it like one, not a casino." His smirk faded. "Watch your mouth." "No, you watch yours. Because if Dad trusted me with this company, I'm going to protect it. Even if that means from you." He laughed, a low, bitter sound. "You wouldn't dare." But I did. That night, I called the company's accountant, an older man, named George, who'd been with Dad for decades. When I asked if he could meet me privately, he hesitated. Then he said, "Your father always said you had a good head on your shoulders. Maybe it's time someone listened to you." The next few weeks were a blur of late nights and quiet tears. George and I went through everything. We found patterns. Money funneled through shell vendors, overpaid consulting fees, equipment purchases that didn't match the inventory. It felt like my heart was splitting open. Not just because of the betrayal, but because this was Dad's legacy. The one thing he built with his bare hands. And Ryan, my own brother, was tearing it apart. By the time I had everything I needed, I wasn't sure if I wanted revenge or justice. Maybe both. But I knew one thing for certain. The next time Ryan tried to humiliate me, it wouldn't be me who walked away ashamed. It would be him. The morning I walked into the Carter & Sons boardroom, the air felt electric, like the moment before a thunderstorm. Ryan sat at the head of the table, laughing with a few of the older partners. When he saw me, his smile vanished. "Well, look who finally decided to show up," he said. "What's this, another attempt at playing boss?" I didn't answer right away. I just laid a thick folder on the table and looked each man in the eye. "Actually, I called this meeting. As majority shareholder, I have the right." You could have heard a pin drop. One of the senior foremen, Tom, cleared his throat. "Majority shareholder?" Ryan chuckled. "Ignore her. She's confused." I opened the folder and handed out copies of the documents George and I had compiled, Dad's will, proof of my ownership, and financial reports showing Ryan's creative accounting. When I finished, I looked straight at him. "Confused, huh?" He flipped through the pages, his face draining of color. "Where did you get this?" "Doesn't matter," I said. "What matters is what you've been doing. Fake invoices, double-charged clients, personal expenses written off as business costs. Dad would be sick if he saw this." Ryan stood, slamming his hand on the table. "You're twisting things. You have no idea how business works." "Maybe not your kind of business, but I know integrity when I see it, and when I don't." The room went still. For the first time, I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before: fear. After the meeting, he cornered me in the hallway. "You think you've won?" he hissed. "You're nothing without me, Em. The employees, the clients, they trust me. They'll never follow you." He stormed out, and I just stood there, heart pounding, trying not to cry. Because deep down, part of me believed him. I'd never run a company. I wasn't a take charge kind of person like Ryan, but I was my father's daughter, and Dad never gave up, not once. That night, I went home to my tiny apartment, sat on the couch, and prayed. Not some long, eloquent prayer, just a few whispered words. Lord, I don't know how to do this, but if you gave me this chance, show me how to lead. The next morning, I drove to the office before sunrise. The place was quiet, the smell of sawdust and old coffee hanging in the air. I walked through each department, talked to employees, listened to their frustrations. Turns out, Ryan's leadership had left everyone exhausted. Late paychecks, unsafe work conditions, no appreciation. The men and women who'd worked for Dad for years were on the verge of quitting. By noon, I called an all-staff meeting. My hands were shaking as I stood before them, but when I opened my mouth, the words came from somewhere deeper than fear. I know things have been hard, and I know you've been lied to, but this company, my father's company, was built on trust and honesty. That's how it's going to be run again. If you're willing to stay, I promise I'll fight for you the way my dad did. For a moment, no one moved. Then Tom, the foreman, stepped forward. If you mean that, Emily, then you've got us. I blinked back tears. I mean it. And just like that, the tide began to turn. Over the next few months, we rebuilt everything. We paid off debts, restructured teams, and landed a major project that put us back on the map. I worked side by side with the crew, showing up before dawn, staying past sunset. I wasn't the boss's daughter anymore. I was part of the family again. Ryan, meanwhile, disappeared for a while. Word got around that his side deals had gone under. He'd lost money, lots of it. I didn't hear from him for nearly 6 months, until one afternoon I found him waiting outside my office. He looked different, thinner, tired, the kind of tired that goes beyond sleep. "Hey," he said quietly, "can we talk?" I hesitated, but nodded. We went into the conference room, and for the first time, he didn't act like he owned the place. He just sat there staring at his hands. "I messed up," he said finally. "I was stupid, prideful, thought I was invincible." I stayed silent. He looked up at me, his eyes glassy. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Em. I just couldn't stand the idea that Dad trusted you more than me." "That's not what it was," I said softly. "He trusted us both. You just didn't see it." He swallowed hard. "I was jealous. You always did everything right. People liked you. Dad depended on you. I wanted that respect, and I went about it the wrong way." It hurt to hear him admit it, because I'd waited years for those words. And now that they were here, I didn't even know what to do with them. "I don't know if I can fix everything, but I want to try." I looked at him for a long moment. There was a time I would have thrown his apology back at him, told him he deserved whatever came next. But grace isn't about what someone deserves, it's about what they need. "Then start by helping," I said finally. "We're rebuilding. If you're serious, prove it." He nodded, eyes shining. "I will." Over the following weeks, Ryan showed up every day. He started small, hauling materials, helping with bids, doing whatever was needed. He didn't ask for titles or authority, just a chance to do right. Slowly, the crew began to forgive him too. I watched him earn back their trust one act at a time. And maybe mine too. One evening, we stood in front of a nearly finished site, a new community center we'd built for the town. The sunset stretched gold across the beams, and Ryan turned to me. "You saved the company," he said quietly. "You saved Dad's company." I smiled faintly. "No, we did, eventually." He laughed under his breath. "You always were better at seeing the good." "Maybe, but it's nice to finally see it in you too." He nodded, looking away. "I don't deserve this, Em." Neither do I said. But Dad believed in second chances. I think he'd be proud. We stood there in silence, the sound of hammers echoing in the distance. For the first time in years, it felt like peace. But life has a funny way of testing that peace, because just when I thought things were finally back on track, I found out something that changed everything again. Something Ryan didn't even know yet. Something that would make him realize exactly who owned the company he'd once tried to steal. The discovery happened almost by accident. We were cleaning out Dad's old office, finally ready to turn it into a conference room. There were boxes of paperwork, old trophies, even a faded Polaroid of him standing in front of his first pickup truck. The sunlight caught the dust in the air, and for a second, it almost felt like he was there with us. Ryan was sorting through a file cabinet when he pulled out an envelope, yellowed around the edges. "What's this?" he asked. I shrugged. Probably another invoice from the Stonebridge project. He turned it over and froze. "It's addressed to you." I frowned and took it from him. My name was written in Dad's familiar scrawl, but the postmark was from a few weeks before he died. My stomach tightened as I carefully opened it. Inside was a short letter and a second envelope, sealed. "Emily, if you're reading this, it means I didn't get the chance to tell you in person. Carter & Sons is more than a business. It's a foundation, built to protect what I love most, my family. Years ago, when I brought Ryan in, I saw something special in him, but I also saw his recklessness. I've set up provisions to make sure neither of you can destroy what we built, especially each other. You'll find the final paperwork in the sealed envelope. Do what's right, not what's easy. Love, Dad." My hands trembled as I tore open the second envelope. Inside were legal documents, transfer deeds, trust statements, corporate amendments, all naming me as the sole owner of Carter & Sons. The company had been placed in a trust that activated upon Dad's death, but Ryan's ownership depended on one condition: that he maintain a clean financial record and uphold the company's values. And he hadn't. I felt my breath catch. Ryan watched me, confusion turning to dread. "What is it?" he asked. I looked up slowly. "Dad left me everything, Ryan. Not just shares, the entire company." He stared at me like I'd spoken another language. "That's not possible. He wouldn't." "He did." My voice shook. "The trust transferred ownership completely once you breached your fiduciary clause. It's all in here." He stepped back, eyes wide, anger and shock flickering across his face. "So what, you own me now? You get to play queen while I fetch the coffee?" "That's not what this is about," I said softly. "This is about accountability." "No," he snapped. "It's about you getting everything, again." He turned away, fists clenched. "You always wanted to be the favorite. Congratulations. You got what you wanted." I swallowed hard. "You think this feels good for me? I didn't ask for this, Ryan." He didn't answer. He just walked out, the slam of the door echoing like thunder through the empty office. For days, I didn't hear from him. Not a call, not a text. I threw myself into work, but every time I saw his empty desk, something in me ached. I wanted justice, but not this kind of silence. Not from my brother. One night, I drove to Mom's house. She was in the kitchen, wearing her old apron, humming while stirring spaghetti sauce like nothing in the world could be wrong. But when she saw my face, her smile faded. "What happened?" she asked, setting down the spoon. I told her everything. The trust, the clause, the confrontation. She listened quietly, hands folded, the way she always did when she was praying without saying it out loud. When she finished, she sighed. "You know, your father once said something I didn't understand until now. He said, sometimes God lets the truth break us before it rebuilds us. Maybe this is that moment, sweetheart, for both of you." I didn't want to break him, Mom. I know, But maybe this is what it takes for Ryan to grow and for you to forgive. Forgiveness. The word hung heavy in the room. I wanted to believe I was capable of it, but part of me still carried the sting of that night at the retirement party. The laughter, the humiliation, the way he'd looked down on me. How do you forgive someone who spent a lifetime treating you like you were small? Still, Mom's words lingered. Maybe forgiveness wasn't a feeling. Maybe it was a decision. A week later, Ryan showed up at my door. He looked different again, more broken this time. His clothes wrinkled, his eyes red-rimmed. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. I stepped aside. He sat down at the kitchen table, the same one where we used to fight over the last slice of pizza as kids. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he said. "I was angry, mostly at myself. I messed up, Em. I betrayed Dad's trust, and yours." He rubbed his face. "When I lost everything, I blamed you. It was easier than facing what I'd done. But the truth is, Dad was right. I wasn't ready to lead. I let pride destroy what mattered most." I felt tears sting my eyes. "Ryan." "No, let me finish," he said, voice trembling. "You've always been the better one, the stronger one. I used to think Dad gave you too much credit, but now I see he just saw your heart. I'm sorry for how I treated you, for every cruel word, for every time I made you feel small." Silence filled the space between us, the kind that hurts before it heals. Finally, I whispered, "I forgive you." He looked up, eyes glistening. "You do?" "I do," I said. "But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means we start again, and this time we build something better." He nodded slowly. "Then let me help, not because I deserve it, but because I want to honor Dad." We spent the next few months rebuilding, not just the company, but our relationship. Ryan took a smaller role focusing on project management while I handled leadership. We argued sometimes, sure, but it was different now. Mutual respect instead of resentment. And for the first time, we worked together. One afternoon, we stood in the newly renovated office. Bright walls, fresh paint, Dad's photo framed on the wall. The hum of saws echoed from the warehouse, and Ryan smiled faintly. "You know, for someone I once said wasn't cut out for business, you've done all right." I laughed softly. "You could say that." He extended his hand. "Partners." I looked at it for a second, then shook it. Partners. As the sun poured through the window, I thought about Dad, about the letter, the trust, the legacy he protected with such wisdom. And I realized something. It wasn't about who owned the company. It was about who was willing to take care of it. Ryan had to lose everything to find himself, and I had to forgive him to find peace. When people ask me now how I ended up running a construction company, I just smile and say, it's a long story. But deep down, I know it's more than that. It's a story about humility, redemption, and the quiet strength of grace. And maybe, just maybe, it's the story my dad always hoped we'd live out.